Letting number 8672, asphalt overlay, Terminal 1, exit roadways and parking lot B at St. Louis Lambert International Airport. We have no bids today.
Hearing number 8219 is being conducted pursuant to Section 26.100.030 of the Revised Code of the City of St. Louis. The purpose of the hearing is to determine whether the conditional use permit issued to Zinni and Yinger, CO, the Cave Anima Outlet and Smoke Shop to occupy 6157 Delmar as a retail sales business with new clothing and cigarette items subject to certain conditions should be revoked. The conditional use permit is numbered as 125349. The conditions in questions are as follows. Condition number 2. There shall be no sale of items that can be used or intended for use as drug paraphernalia as defined in Ordinance 68404 or its successor ordinances, including but not limited to food scales, glass tubes, disposable lighter with pop-off tops, steel scrubbing pads and screens, rolling papers, ephedrine or pseudoephedrine, diet supplements, sleep aids, bath salts, or other substitutes for illegal drugs. In addition, there shall be no sale of cigars or cigarillos commonly used or adapted for use involving controlled substances, examples of which are included but not limited to the following: Phillies, Dutch Masters, White Owl, Swisher Sweets, Splitterillos, Backwoods, Optimo and Garcia, and Vega, and Game. Condition 4. There should be no loitering, for which the applicant must post a no loitering sign and enforce it. Condition 6. The applicant must apply for and receive a permit from the City of St. Louis Building Division before posting signage, and the signage must be professionally prepared and approved by the Office of the Zoning Administrator before being installed. Condition 7. There shall be no temporary signage on the premise or posted to the exterior or interior of the windows or doors of the establishment at any time. The Office of the Zoning Administrator has the burden to prove that the conditional use permit conditions have not been complied with. After all evidence of the zoning inspector has been presented, the board will ask for additional testimony, if any, in support of the revocation. Then, the conditional use holder will be given the opportunity to present evidence. Lastly, the board will hear other testimony in opposition to the revocation, if any. Your testimony is being recorded. When you come forward, please state your name and address and be sworn in. As you testify, please direct your comments to the board and not to those in the audience. Members of the audience are asked to remain silent and not coach the witnesses. During your testimony, this board may have questions for you. Following the hearing, the board will proceed with its regular agenda. Following the conclusion of the regular agenda, the board will deliberate, discuss, and vote on the hearings. The board will notify the conditional use holder of its decision by mail in about 2 weeks. The Board of Public Service has in its possession the following documents, which are being introduced into evidence. Item 1, a certified copy of the zoning code of the City of St. Louis. Item 2, the conditional use permit numbered as 125349, issued to Zinni and Yinger, the Cave Anima Outlet and Smoke Shop to occupy 6157 Delmar as a retail sales business with new clothing and cigarette items subject to certain conditions. Item 3, a letter dated April 9, 2018, sent to the Cave Anime Outlet and Smoke Shop, CO, Zinni and Yinger, from the zoning inspector warning of the violations of the conditions that were found upon a recent site inspection and the potential for a revocation hearing should the violations not be corrected within 30 days of the date of the letter. Item 4, a memorandum dated May 23, 2018 from the zoning inspector to the zoning administrator stating that upon that date, the zoning inspector found violations of conditions numbered as 2, 4, 6, and 7 of the conditional use permit. This memo includes photographs of the noted violations. Item 5, public notices for today's hearing. And item 6, a certified letter dated June 19, 2018, sent to the conditional use permit holder and the property owner from the board secretary providing notice of today's hearing. The board asks a representative of the Office of the Zoning Administrator to please come forward and be sworn in.
So help me God.
State your name for the board, please.
My returner zoning inspector for the city of St. Louis.
Can you tell us about your investigations?
Okay. As of today, number 2 is still in violation. They still have the glass pipes. They still have the rolling papers. They do have some hookah pipes, but they still have a lot of other pipes in the facility. I did not see any cigars, but it's basically a lot of pipes. Number 4 is still in violation. There is no loitering sign posted. However, he pasted on the window and the door some lettering that says no loitering, but that's not the official sign. Number 6 is still in violation because of the signs in the window. Number 7 is in violation because of, again, the signs in the window and the way that he attached that other information to the window, so it makes it in violation because it's temporary signage.
So just to reiterate, make sure I'm correct with this, your inspection today, and you still found violation of conditions 2, 4, 6, and 7.
Correct.
Okay. And have you personally spoken to the business owner concerning these in the past?
I have not. I've spoken to the persons that he have working there, and I asked them to have him to get in touch with me. I left cards. I didn't hear from him when I sent him his 30-day letter, which had all of my information on it. So I have not personally spoke to the owner.
Thank you. Other questions from the board? Okay. Thank you very much.
No.
Okay. At this time, the board asks that the representative of the Office of the Department of Health please come forward and testify.
Would you raise your right hand, please? Would you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Would you state your name for the board, please?
I'm Nathan McDermott, Environmental Health Officer.
Can you please tell us about your investigations?
I went by today about 12:15, conducted a general sanitation inspection. The only violations I noticed were the employee bathroom sink was clogged.
Any questions from the board?
Was there any smoking in the shop?
They had incense burning at the time.
Further questions from the board?
Yes. Were there any prior violations on any prior visit?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you very much. If there's anyone else present who wishes to testify in support of this revocation, please come forward and be sworn in.
Are you supporting the revocation?
Yes.
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you state your name for the board, please?
Brandon Sterling. My name is Brandon Sterling. I'm the executive director of the Skinker de Bolivar Community Council. I have met with the owner. We actually met prior to them getting their permit. Myself, the neighborhood improvement specialist, 28th Ward Alderwoman Heather Navarro, along with a contingent of residents and business owners in the loop, and spoke to them about what they intended on selling and went over some of the prohibited items that should not appear in the store, what they told us they'd sell, and then what they actually began to sell once the store was open and they had their permit was completely different. I've had at least, if I include that first meeting, at least 4 encounters with them, about half in phone and half in person. One of them being the last time we took a smoke shop to this type of hearing setting. They came, they sat in the audience. Myself and Brian Coldy met with them afterwards outside. And they really expressed the disinterest in correcting the problem. You know, in their mind, they felt like somehow some opening would be created for them to do something different. And they seem to be comparing what they could and couldn't do to what happens on the university city side of the loop, which is obviously not germane to this, right? But yeah, the glass pipes, there were a number of other items that we actually mentioned to them. The rolling papers, they also were selling a type of stash away can that they'd agreed that they wouldn't sell, that we all agreed was used for young people to hide drugs and transport drugs between venues and things of that sort, all things that we felt, you know, kind of compromised, you know, the environment in the loop, but also for people that live nearby the loop. But again, in all my conversations, they seemed really to be disinterested. They felt like a way would be made some kind of way for them to do what they wanted to do rather than do what the law asked them to do.
So for my clarification, tell me again, you're a neighbor, you're a resident?
Well, I'm employed by the neighborhood. I run the neighborhood's Community Development Corporation, Skinker de Bolivar Community Council.
And just to also be clear, you are in support of this revocation?
Yes.
Okay. Questions from the board? Okay. Thank you very much. If there's anyone else who is in support of this revocation that wishes to testify, please come forward and be sworn in. Seeing none. The board asks the conditional use permit holder to please come forward and be sworn in. Let the record reflect the conditional use permit holder is not present for today's hearing. If there is anyone present opposing this revocation, please come forward and be sworn in. Seeing none. I would like to introduce the zoning inspector's report into additional evidence for today's hearing as item A. The matter concerning hearing number 8219 is now closed and submitted. We will now proceed with our next hearing. Hearing number 8220. This hearing, numbered 8220, is being conducted pursuant to Ordinance 68607 of the City of St. Louis. The appellant, Henrietta Dortch, has appealed the Commissioner of Forestry's decision to service dead trees in the rear yard at 5928 Laura. The Board of Public Service has in its possession the following documents which are being introduced into evidence. Item 1, a certified copy of Ordinance number 68607 of the City of St. Louis. Item 2, a copy of private tree violation notice and accompanying pictures dated June 13th, 2018, sent by the Forestry Division regarding a tree of heaven located in the rear of the yard at 5928 Laura. Item 3, a copy of a hazard tree appeal submitted by Henrietta Dortch dated July 5th, 2018. Item 4, a certified letter sent to the appellant Henrietta Dortch dated July 24th, 2018, providing notice of today's hearing. And item 5, a copy of the public notices for today's hearing. At this time, the board will first swear in and hear from the city's representatives present, followed by the appellant and those in support of the appeal. The board will then ask those in opposition to the appeal, if any, to address the board. Your testimony is being recorded. When you come forward, please state your name and address and be sworn in. As you testify, please direct your comments to the board and not to those in the audience. Members of the audience are asked to remain silent and not coach the witnesses. During your testimony, members of this board may have questions for you. Following the hearing, the board will proceed with its regular agenda. Following the conclusion of the regular agenda, the board will deliberate, discuss, and vote on the hearing. The board asks a representative from Forestry Division to please come forward and be sworn in.
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Would you state your name for the board?
My name is Dan Devereaux. I'm an arborist for the City of St. Louis.
Can you speak up just a little bit?
The arborist for the City of St. Louis.
Can you please tell us about your investigations?
Okay, I went there originally on May 31st, 2018 to investigate a work order for a private tree complaint at 5928 Laura. When I got there, you could clearly see from the street a dead tree in the yard. I circled back through the alley and to make sure that it was within their border. I took pictures. I also went back today and re-inspected. I have pictures from today if you'd like to accept these and pass them to the board members. And just to reconfirm that it is a completely dead tree with the bark falling off of it. And the only green portion of the tree that's visible is actually a poison ivy vine that's growing on the tree.
So it's apparent to you that this tree is dead?
Yes, sir, it is
And
dead.
it's apparent to you that this tree poses a safety hazard?
Yeah, it is in violation of the city ordinance because it's a dead tree near private property and city property, so it poses a hazard to property and personal safety.
And so your recommendation with the tree is?
Is to remove it.
And there's nothing else short of removing it that would
No,
solve
sir.
this
There's
problem?
nothing that can be done to remediate the problem with this tree. It needs to be removed. It won't. Trees don't come back to life. Once it dies, that portion of the tree has to be removed according to the city ordinance.
And so, in your opinion, hazards of a high wind or a storm could cause this tree to break off and topple?
There's really no way to predict failure of a dead tree. Once a tree is dead, you have to assume that it could fail at any time.
Questions from the board?
Yes, Mr. Devereaux, I have a few questions on this tree I have in this Atlantis. Are there properties? I'm curious. Are there properties on each side of this address?
Yes, sir. There are.
And when you're referring to city property, I assume you're referring to the right-of-way?
Yeah, the alley. The alley.
Couple more basic questions. Are you certified with the International Society of Arboriculture as an arborist?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay. Approximate diameter of the tree, if you know offhand?
30 inches.
So, in your opinion, a fairly significant...
A fairly large tree.
Gotcha. And I can kind of guesstimate the height. My last question is, you cannot contend what another arborist would report, but do you feel another arborist with ISA would deem this as a non-hazard?
No, I wouldn't think that anybody would call this any other way. It's clearly dead. The bark's falling off of it. There's no thing in the tree presently that would be debatable as far as its life or its sustainability. This is clearly a dead tree.
And I thank you. I did have one more question. I certainly respect the property owner for being here today. It is in her right with our ordinance to appeal this. Have you had any conversations with Ms. Dortch?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Other-
Mr. President.
Sorry.
Mr. Devereaux, if this tree was, it could be 30 feet higher. If this tree was 10 feet high, would it still be considered or deemed hazardous under?
That is kind of hard to determine at this point. I would have to see, if you were to say, is this enough tree removed, I would have to look at it and tell you after you had that portion removed. To say that if it were 10 feet high, would it be safe? I can't say that because it's right next to someone else's garage and it's right by an alley where there's traffic every day. So it would just depend on what portion of the tree was remaining and how that was oriented related to the city property and the other private property.
Thank you.
Further questions from the board? Thank you very much. If there's another representative from the City Forestry Division that would like to testify, please come forward. Okay. Thank you. At this time, the board asks the appellant to please come forward and be sworn in.
Right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Would you state your name for the board, please?
Henrietta Dortch,
Would you state your address, please?
5928 Laura Avenue, St. Louis, Missouri, 63136.
Go ahead, Ms. Dortch.
I wrote a letter of appeal. I don't know if you have the letter. The letter that I submitted to the City of Forestry was I am a 81-year-old single in poor health and a fixed income of Social Security senior citizen. I cannot afford to have this 30-inch tree of heaven removed. For 25 years, I worked for the St. Louis Development Corporation, CDA, and in my position, I was certified over 200 minority businesses and women businesses. That was my position, to certify. I was Director of Contract Compliance and Certification for the St. Louis Development Corporation. I retired after 25 years from the St. Louis Development Corporation, CDA, and I just don't have the money. I'm on a fixed income. I'm 80 years old and in poor health, and I just can't afford to pay for a dead tree in my backyard.
So, Ms. Dortch, first of all, I want to say on behalf of the board, thank you for your service to the city. Thank you for being a resident of the city, and I certainly understand your situation, and I'm sure the members of the board do as well. We are bound by ordinance for public safety, for not only other folks in the city, residents, but also for yours as well. For if that tree would topple and fall on your home, you would be just in as much danger as someone in the house next to you or within the public right-of-way. So what this board is charged to do is to look at the situation and determine whether the situation is safe or unsafe. That is what our purview is. We do not author the ordinance which allows us to arbitrarily decide anything other than whether the tree is safe or unsafe. So we understand your situation, and I would certainly defer to the Commissioner of Forestry and the Director of Parks concerning that situation as we go forward. But I think our purview today is to make that determination. So I would ask if the board has any questions for the appellant at this time.
I do have a few questions, and I echo the President's comments commending you. Have you, a couple questions I think are important to this matter. Have you had any opportunity to seek, these can be quite expensive as I know, have you had an opportunity to seek any reputable companies' free estimates in the region or in the city to at least get a ballpark, if you will, cost estimate for the removal?
I was contacted by a gentleman that had a tree service, and he offered me with a senior discount the cost of $850 to remove the tree. The tree is, like I said, 30 inches, and my house is quite a distance far from the tree in the alley. The only thing next to the tree is my garage, which several limbs from the tree has fallen on my garage, and I have 2 holes in the garage that I'm having repaired. But that was the only bid that I received.
Well, from my experience, and just looking at this tree without being on site now, if that gentleman is bonded and insured, I would venture a guess that would be the cheapest bid you could possibly get from anybody in the area. I may be wrong, but for the size of that tree, If they're bonded and insured, I believe that would be fair. So I was just curious if you'd gotten any estimates.
That was the only estimate I received. I don't know whether the gentleman is bonded or not. Even at that $850, I still can't afford that type of money to have a dead tree removed from my yard.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions from the board for the appellate? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. If there's anyone else in favor of the appeal that wishes to testify, please come forward and be sworn in.
I do. Would you state your name for the board? Fred Hodges. Would you state your address? 9712 Cambria Drive, Moline Acres, Missouri. Okay. On behalf of my mother-in-law, I brought another contractor down just to see what type of price we could get for it. I know she doesn't have the money. He told me $1,200, which she got a better price, I believe, of $850. But even at the $850, she just doesn't have it. And I've been involved in municipal government. I understand how it works. Me and her talked about this, and I said, I'm retired as well as my wife. So we're not even in a position to help her if we could. We just don't have it, and I don't really know what she can do. I don't know if the city offers any type of assistance in something like this or not. So this is why we're here, because I said, well, you need to be at the hearing. You need to explain to them what's going on. And maybe someone down there can direct us to somebody that could help her out. That's why I'm here, Jim. Okay?
Any questions from the board?
Well, it seems like I'm doing a lot of talking here, but this is the department I'm responsible for, so that's why I want to be helpful. We have a program in place where we have a contractor that does private tree work for us. That individual, forestry does not go on private property to remove hazard trees, because the only time we would is if it's compromising the right of way and simply make a cut or cuts. This contractor can come up with a price estimate for our staff and relay it back to you. And what happens there is that individual, that company, removes the hazard. They bill the city, we pay that bill, and then we in turn bill the property owner for that cost. At times in forestry, if a lot of people are unable to pay these bills, but we could certainly work with an individual who's making a concerted effort to pay, and perhaps not in full, but at least making a concerted effort to pay. And that way you're getting billed by the city, and you do owe the bill, but you're not paying somebody up front to remove it. So we would need to be reimbursed for the cost of what we paid the contractor, and that's how it works. Okay. So I'm just throwing that out there as food for thought. But the fact of the matter is, it's a grave concern to have that tree on your relative's property, and if it fails, it could injure or kill someone or damage property to a lesser extent, if you will.
We're in agreement with that.
Right. I know you're not contesting
that it should be removed.
Sure.
That's not a problem.
Right.
It's just the fact that financially, she's not in a position where all three of us are retired. I'm not in a position. And I didn't know if you all offered anything other than just outright paying a contractor up front. And so from what you just told me, maybe that would work for her. Right.
Well, if we don't set up formal payment plans is what I'm saying, but if there's a concerted effort to pay, that's something that could not necessarily be arranged, but if she's paying, that's obviously what's needed to be done.
Okay. I think we're all on the same page.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions from the board?
Well, not a question, but a compliment. Director, I certainly appreciate your concern and your compassion for a citizen, 81-year-old citizen in the city of St. Louis. I certainly appreciate your compassion, and maybe we get this done in a way that she doesn't have to choose between cutting a tree or getting food or medicine. So I certainly appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. If there's anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the appeal, please come forward and be sworn in. Seeing none. If there's anyone in opposition to this appeal that wishes to testify, please come forward and be sworn in. Seeing none. With that in mind, I would like to submit the photograph provided by the Division of Forestry's arborist of the tree at the noted location as evidence item A. The matter concerning hearing number 8220 is now closed and submitted. The board will continue with its regular agenda. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Scobie.
Here.
Director Wilson.
Here.
Director Hayes.
Here.
Director Augustin is excused. Director Aragy.
Here.
Director Edwards.
Here.
And President Bradley.
Here we have a quorum. I'll call this meeting to order.
From the President, Director of Public Utilities and Streets. MBR Management Corporation for public improvement at 2254 South Grand in City Block 1367 recommends approval. One York Partners LLC for public improvement at 215 York Avenue in City Block 3882 be approved subject to certain conditions. And Washington University School of Medicine for public improvement upgrading accommodations at Clayton, Euclid, McKinley, and various other locations around the campus recommends approval subject to certain conditions. From the Director of Public Utilities, recommendation that the following emergencies be approved as follows. To repair chain of rocks primary pump motor 5 kV circuit breakers. Make all necessary repairs to permanently relocate electric service for meter and tap building to the remaining pipe yard facility served by such. And installation, startup, and commissioning of a vacuum circuit breaker recommends approval. From the Director of Public Utilities and Streets, joint recommendation that the following permits for Union Ameren, Missouri be approved subject to certain conditions as follows. To bore 4-inch conduit from pole to existing manhole and pull cable approximately 80 feet bore on Dodier and 150 feet bore on spring. Project to increase reliability to Boys and Girls Club of Greater St. Louis at intersection of Spring and Dodier. For an open trench dug bank about 24 through 30 inch in width with a single 5-inch plastic with concrete encasement crossing Skinker Boulevard between Oradell and Aberdeen. To set a new pole and bore 220 feet of conduit at 1018 Mississippi. To install 28 feet of 1 4-inch conduit and pull cable for new service to 1907 Locust at St. Charles Street between North 20th and North 19th Street. Recommendation that the following permits be approved subject to certain conditions as follows. Charter, starting at existing charter pole, charter would like to place a vault on sidewalk alley in between streets of McPherson and Westminster Place. Bore south 222 feet on Vanderveer towards the south side of McPherson, placing the vault on the sidewalk. From there, bore west on McPherson 203 feet, placing another vault behind 3917 Lindell and McPherson, where they will enter onto private property and the building. All other work will be completed on private property. Bluebird Network, bore in place 1 2-inch conduit and handholds for new fiber, starting near 1101 South Kings Highway, heading west for 430 feet. At this point, place new handhold at 5042 Oakland and continue placing west for 1,050 feet. At that point, place new handhold at 505 Oakland Avenue and continue west for 700 feet. At this point, place new handhold at 5120 Oakland, etc. AT&T to place 303 feet of buried copper cable from manhole 4020 at the side of 3710 Palm Street within right-of-way, south of Spring to the pole at the rear of 3648 Palm Street. From the Director of Public Utilities and Public Safety, joint recommendation that permit for Tower Grove Baptist Church for a boundary adjustment at 4221 and 4253 through 57 Magnolia in City Block 4930 be approved subject to certain conditions. From the Director of Public Safety, recommendation that the following festival zones be approved subject to certain conditions as follows. Taste of Africa, September 1st, 2018 at O'Fallon Park. And 9 Network Media, Pioneer Spirit Awards, September 8th, 2018 at Olive between Grand and Spring. And New Sunny Mount Community Day, September 8th, 2018 at Shreve between Rosalie and West Florissant and Rosalie between Shreve and 30 feet before Alley. Now we have the conditional uses.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Terrell Island, zoning plan examiner for the City of St. Louis, representing the building commissioner. For board order number 766, transmitted herewith the recommendations for the following conditional use applications. Approved with conditions is recommended for 6 applications, and they are 5730 Finkman, 4420 Tennessee Avenue, 4145 Margaretta, 5855 Elm Bank, 1051 through 53 Hampton Avenue, and 5836 to 50 Macklin Avenue. I request that these recommendations be approved as submitted. Are there any questions or comments about these recommendations?
Are there any questions from the board on the conditional uses?
Motion to approve the conditional uses.
Second. Moved in second for approval of today's conditional uses. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Scobie.
Aye.
Director Wilson.
Aye.
Director Hayes.
Aye.
Director Augustine is excused. Director Ergy.
Aye.
Director Edwards. And President Bradley.
Aye. Conditional uses are approved. Hearing number 8219, 6157 Delmar is a retail sales business, clothing, cigarette items. Just a little bit of information. We heard from the zoning inspector that there are still 4 conditions that are in violation of the conditional use permit as of today. We heard from the neighborhood, a business representative, that the business has presented and sold contains items different than what they were originally told was going to be there. And the last piece of information is the conditional use permit holder was not present at today's hearing. So I'll open the floor for discussion.
I just had a question. We haven't extended the time frame for them to come in compliance for this previously, have we?
We have not.
Okay, I knew
but
we had
typically when we've considered an extension of compliance in the past, it's a result of discussion. The business owner working with the zoning section, the business owner explaining to us that they will work with the zoning section to come into compliance. And today we've had nothing along those lines.
Yeah, I recalled some store on the Loop. I thought we had a similar discussion about something like this, but that was another address.
Further discussion.
There's signage at the front of the store that advertises Kratom, Kratom, and our counselor has investigated that. It's under consideration.
Yeah, I wanted to see if I could find any law against it, because it apparently is considered by the DEA to have properties that are similar to opioids, and so I but I couldn't find a direct law except, how it might possibly be used, but it was certainly concerning. But if I had or did, I would refer it for another prosecution, but it's certainly concerning to the Department of Health.
That matter is not before
Yes.
this board, and I think it would be inappropriate to make any rulings or invite any type of statements or evidence with respect to Kratom or any other type of drug paraphernalia other than the glass piping and rolling papers that was testified to by the inspector. So I think going beyond that exposes us to a lack of due process and not being fair.
Further comments? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion, please.
I move to revoke the permit.
Second.
I have a motion to revoke and a second. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Scobie.
Aye.
Director Wilson.
Aye.
Director Hayes.
Aye.
Director Augustin is excused. Director Argy.
Aye.
Director Edwards.
Aye.
And President Bradley.
Aye. Revoked. Hearing number 8220 for 5928 Laura for a dead hazardous tree. I think we heard clearly from the Forestry Division, the certified arborist, that the tree is in fact on private property. It is in fact dead. There is in fact no remedy short of doing a removal of this tree, which would make it safe. We also spoke to the appellant, Ms. Dorch, who's been an 81-year resident of the city of St. Louis, an employee of the city as well through SLDC, I believe. And, obviously we're very thankful for people like Ms. Dorch in our community. However, it is incumbent on this board to enforce the rules and ordinances that are set by the Board of Aldermen, and the decision that we have to render today is whether we believe that the tree is unsafe or not. And I think we heard from Ms. Dorch's son-in-law that they obviously know the tree is unsafe. It's an issue of whether financially they would be able to do the removal of such a large tree. What I would ask the board to consider is the safety of the tree, and what I would also ask is the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Forestry to, if we do determine that this is an unsafe tree, to, as I'm sure he has done many times with many residents, take into consideration, we're dealing with an elderly city resident on a very fixed income, and it would be in everyone's best interest if we could work through this process to not create an issue, as Director Edwards mentioned earlier. I'll open the floor for discussion. Seeing none, I'll take a motion, please.
That was very well stated, President Bradley. The crux of the matter is the tree itself. All your comments would certainly be taken into consideration by our department, and I make a motion that we deny the appeal based on the tree being a hazard.
Second.
Moved and seconded to deny today's appeal. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Scobie.
Aye.
Director Wilson.
Aye.
Director Hayes.
Aye.
Director Augustin is excused. Director Argy.
Aye.
Director Edwards.
Aye.
And President Bradley.
Aye, the appeal is denied. I'd like to turn your attention to our meeting minutes from last Tuesday, August 14th, 2018. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes as presented?
I move to approve last week's minutes.
Second.
Moved and second for approval of minutes. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Scobie.
Aye.
Director Wilson.
Aye.
Director Hayes.
Abstain.
Director Augustin is excused. Director Argy.
Aye.
Director Edwards.
Aye.
And President Bradley.
Aye, the minutes are approved. Today's agenda, questions or comments on the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Moved and second for approval of today's agenda. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Scobie.
Aye.
Director Wilson.
Aye.
Director Hayes.
Aye.
Director Augustin is excused. Director Ergy.
Aye.
Director Edwards.
Aye.
And President Bradley.
Aye, today's agenda is approved. Motion for adjournment, please.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.